Mike, we've done 142 episodes of this show. Can you live with it?
I can live with it.
I can live with it. Right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Folks, we're here. We have come a long way. I know so many people have been incredibly excited for us to get to this episode. I can't believe we're already here. I'm so excited to talk about it. Today we are doing Season 6, Episode 19, The Legend. That is in the Pale Moonlight. We watched it with the patrons earlier this week. They got to see Mike's face watch it. Did we press record on the video? Don't worry about it.
No.
But how you doing, Mike? It's a beautiful
I'm
spring
doing good
day.
because it's important. Apparently, I did go back and piece together the watch along for the rest of our patrons. So you do get a good chunk of. Well, you get all of what we said. You just have to look at our. You can't look at our faces.
At our headshots,
Yeah.
They look much better than
That's
our
true.
faces.
So yeah, I want to say first, I'm kind of proud because apparently this is sort of a momentous episode. I've gathered, and with the exception of remembering that someone around season 1 or 2 had posted in our chat some sort of a Batman reference, right to the original Tim Burton Batman. Have you ever danced with the devil in the Pale Moonlight?
Right,
The Joker
right.
says they made an allusion to that. That is the only snippet of callback for this. So talk about somehow remaining spoiler free through six and a half episodes. I've done so. I'd like to keep it that way, but I keep tempting fate by saying it out loud.
Well, yeah. Well, had you ever seen the meme?
No,
It's a fake meme.
no, that line hit me completely unsullied.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
That's,
and it was glorious. Even then, even at that point, I thought he might be. It was a reverse flipper test of Sisko to see if he would give if he was bluffing that it's a fake, to see if Sisko would give a tell.
which would be a really smart. It'd be a move that would be very Romulan. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it.
So yeah. Anyway, it was awesome to watch. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, here we are.
Here we are. Well, we are going to get into it 6 ways from Sunday. Don't worry. But we are going to begin with our comments from last week, Inquisition. Also, one of the important episodes of Deep Space Nine, because guess what? We're in Season 6. They're all important. Okay, well, before we get too far into In the Pale Moonlight, and I can't wait to get into the etymology of that name.
Yeah,
Because you mentioned it being a Batman quote.
I think it's from the Bible too. Yeah.
That will be coming up. That's a little
Okay.
teaser, because I think the answer to that is hilarious and wonderful. So, at least according to the trivial trivia that I came up. But before we even get into our patron comments about Inquisition, I just realized, Mike, you and Chancellor Jen are famous now.
We are indeed. Yes, we are famous.
You sent me last night. You guys were both on the news.
We were. I wish I had remembered that we talked about this yesterday because I forgot to bring the picture with me. But I'll pull it up by the time we do.
While I'm reading,
Yes.
you have to pull it up, because I know you have screenshots because you
I'll just
texted
email
them
it
to
myself.
me.
Yeah, it's really funny. There in our neighborhood. There's some cars got stolen, and we happened to be walking the dog when the news people were doing their puff piece basically about it. And well, I guess whatever the opposite of puff piece is, it was
Deathly serious.
Fox and ABC who were both sent out, and it was funny because they both had their microphones and they both asked questions. You can guess which news outlet was a little more sensational about it. I'll let you. Yeah. Of course, I won't say that actually out loud. Anyway,
I had like 3 things queued up.
So anyway, but we were not dressed for TV. Thankfully, I had to adjudicate a show last night, so I had like combed my hair. But CEO Jen had literally just come back from a run and was like wearing her workout duds, which included a prop referee hat that I had bought for a project I was working on, but she just threw it on for the run. So she does this stand of wearing a referee hat, which
look, she's calling balls and strikes on the cars being stalled. Meanwhile, you're trying to get those gigawatts.
Yeah, it was. I was surprised.
Marty!
I was surprised at the theft. Let me.
So as you're watching, as we're reading these comments, look forward to those coming up on your screen. But let's do. That's not it.
That's right.
Inquisition. Here is what you had to say. Joshua Cronin says, I enjoy this little facet of the Federation we get to see. Great actor, William Sadler, to make it pop. While I did enjoy the Section 31 movie, I wish it had been a little more in sync with this, so we had some more Deep Space Nine love. But alas, I give it 82 self-sealing stem bolts. Agreed 100%. Brian from Video Game Drive. Excuse me, we both have the plague.
Yeah. Okay.
Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, hey guys, and happy birthday, Referee Chancellor. A big controversial episode here for some fans, but honestly, I think Section 31 fixes a lot of wormholes.
Oh.
I imagine Section 31 watches Deep Space Nine very closely, the station, not the show. They probably buried Sisko's Maquis planet bombing because it benefited everyone for Sisko to do a little war criming as a treat. O'Brien's contact in the Mob episode, Section 31. I think we obliquely referenced that without saying it directly, but clearly was Section 31. The sudden disappearance of Lieutenant Primin in Season 1, Section 31, 100%. Primin got disappeared by Section 31. Sisko being allowed to grow a beard as an anti-Dominion intimidation tactic. Vorta can't grow beards, and that makes Weyoun mad in my headcanon. 31, baby. Brian, I love how you think. In all seriousness, Sloan is another of the long-time fantastic guest stars. I believe he believes he's doing the right thing, and the way they all managed to justify their existence in that round table at the end of the episode, perfection. 88 self-redacting stem bolts, and I'm going to try my hardest to watch the next stream. And you did. We were all there. Kailana Dakmar says, since the genetically engineered misfits under Bashir, and Bashir admitted he was one, Section 31 had their eyes on him, and the only way to test and contact Julian was by pretending he was a mole. Somewhere in all the behind-the-scenes interviews, they say as much. Sorry, Keith. I don't remember what my opinion was, so I don't know if I'm correctly corrected, but I'm assuming you're right. Section 31 job isn't everyday catching traitors and interrogating. They do proactive OPs. Yeah, good point. Could you ever believe you'd wish for Dick Cheney versus now Trump and Musk and Putin debacle of the administration? No, I cannot believe. It is, thinking back to like 2005 or so, I don't wish for Dick Cheney, but to think that would be better is astounding to me.
Well, Keith, I do want to say this.
Okay.
It's important that I say this. We often talk about therapy and how we've learned emotionally that you can feel all the emotions at the same time. Like multiple things and feelings can be happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I stand by that. But that also means that not everything is binary. We don't have to choose. And we don't have to say that I would prefer Cheney, because I think it's fair to say I don't want either of them.
Or the way I would think about it, take the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the big bad. You just don't realize there's an even badder bad that you could not possibly have anticipated. But yes. Yeah, it is crazy that Dick Cheney looks like the less bad guy now. Anyway, they continue. Now, I'm all for USA 20th century Rome keeping the global peace and staying protected by a constitution with rights I was willing to fight for when I was in the military and slowly gain more human rights. I'd prefer that than the March Fight Die protests like the 60s and 70s we'll be doing again soon. Yeah, boy, history, perspective. But thank you for your service.
Yeah.
For reals. So Kevin Miles says, Deep Space Nine did covert ops great with Section 31. I don't think Next Gen could have pulled it off half as good. Agreed. Sadler and Siddig have great chemistry. Introducing Section 31 just threw a new twist into Deep Space Nine. I give this episode 94 self-sealing stem bolts. I look forward to your reviews every week. My hat is off to the Statler and Waldorf of DS9 reviewers. I'll take it. We should definitely put that on something. Hibernation Pod says, I always enjoyed William Sadler's performance in whatever role he played. He was perfect for this role, and I can't see anyone else doing it. The Section 31 story is very interesting, and Sadler sold it for me. Right down to his skeletal death face. I don't know if he'd put that on his resume, but you're 100% right. 90 self-sealing stem bolts. A friend from years ago used to say, "pwop" for fart.
That's like just exchanging the tweep vowels, so I'll take it.
Tweep, pwop, plop.
Now we're sounding like we're in a Batman comic and punching someone.
But it's all just farts.
Equally awesome, actually.
I mean, I would 100% watch that.
Wait,
cartoon.
how has no one made the superhero who just like blows you away with like superhuman farts?
My brother did a D&D character like that.
What was his name?
Scott.
Wait, the character is just called Scott?
No, that's my brother's name.
Well done, sir. That's a great way to head off the inevitable tangent by just no budding.
No budding. Just knowing.
Yeah.
Hibernation continues. I remember him for being one of the first people to mention things about how younger folks are much more open about speaking about things and identity and vulnerability. He is only a few years older than us, yet took notice of it and noticed a large gap between, say, Gen Xers and Zers. For example, it took a lot of work for me to open up about things. I still struggle. I see all around how people can let go and tell their story. I'm still afraid after all this time to even post here and have it read out loud, but I do it anyway. Yeah, I think that is... I think you're exactly right. I mean, there is a huge generational gap. I think, as a... What are we? We're Zennials. We're the people between X and Z.
We're old.
We're old, but I think in the same way that we're the sort of gap generation that grew up analog and finished digital, I think we're also that way in terms of self-expression and being open about our therapy and our feelings and our vulnerabilities and our identities and such. Like, when we began our life, that was not a thing that we do. Now it is a thing that everybody does. And it's really inspiring to see kids, and like I think about like my nephew or whatever who's like 11, 12, 13, and just like there it is, it's all right there. And he has not only is he expressing all of these complex things about who he is and how he feels and all that kind of stuff, he has a language for it that we didn't.
Yeah.
Like a vocabulary for it.
So 2 quick points on it, and I think you're right, Keith. And I think there is, for as much warranted criticism as we could derive from the fact that we're a little doom and gloom recently, which I think there's plenty of reason for. However, if I was to stick on an optimistic hat, it would be these couple of things. Like Keith just said, you see a lot of conversation about how, there wasn't autism in the 80s and 90s, or there wasn't, these things are caused by vaccines, clearly, because they didn't exist. The truth of the matter is, as you pinpointed, all this stuff existed. It just wasn't language for it. There wasn't diagnoses, and people were just told to shut up and be better. I'm speaking about myself.
Be better at math, Mike.
Yeah. You're just a screw up, right? And then you then internalize those things, and then you are worse, right? Like our asymptote,
100%,
right, goes this way. My anxiety, my whatever issues I have, escalated as I got older. My hope is, because we've provided a language and some more early intervention for a lot of the younger kids, perhaps they'll find a downward slope or at least maintain, and that is awesome. I think it should be. And I've seen that anecdotally in the hundreds of High School Musicals I've seen in the past few months. Kids who are really open about not just like their pronouns, but some of their diagnoses in their bios to let you know why maybe they present a little more jittery or behave a certain way on stage. Yeah. And that's amazing. That is awesome. Or, they took on Head Over Heels, which is like a whole musical about gender identity and politics and fluidity, and self-directed it and self-presented it for the school at a Quaker school. And there's a lot of bravery that the youth is showing right now that I hope will translate and not just be crushed moving forward, that it can prevail.
Well, we're at an interesting tipping point where those forces you're talking about, an entire generation with language and understanding, and not just finding better ways to mask who they are. They're finding ways to embrace who they are, and it's not about controlling or fixing. It's about using it as the superpower, whatever it is. Whether it's like a neurodivergence for us, or whether it's a gender identity or anything else. Being able to embrace it as a positive point, as a point of strength, as a point of whatever, as opposed to something you have to hide for all of these years. So we have that side of the generation coming from health, finding ways to okay, I'm good at this, I'm not good at this, how can I use this knowledge and move forward, versus a very regressive other half trying to crush and destroy and harm these people. And we're in a very sort of inspiring / terrifying time right now.
Whereas many of these, I keep saying kids, it's such a pejorative, but or it's very binary, right? We're old, they're kids, but for this conversation, we'll use it. And they are also, when it comes to art and media, light years ahead, just intellectually and skill based as to where we were. However, that's because they're native, right? They're digital natives, and they speak this language. Whereas they lack a little of the facility that we had growing up, because we had to kind of learn it all ourselves, be it computers, and we kind of were there for the transition points, and so we sort of like built it from the inside out. Our weird
generation, yeah.
And so I feel like we have a proclivity that they don't have. Also, they lack a lot of, not all, I'm painting with a very broad brush, lack a bit more of an intercommunication skill that we were forced to learn. One of them being writing, right? And now with tools like ChatGPT and AI and things, and just the internet at their palms, there's a lot less need for fact memorization or the facility of language like we had. And that, whether that's good or bad is not the conversation I'm having. It's just a difference. And we sit in a really interesting place where we kind of.
Well, and I as we're saying this, I'm just sort of should not be a new thought, but realizing we've spent the last 20 years telling a generation of people, hey, be who you are, be specific, allow your freak flag to fly, be open about your gender identity, your sexual identity, your race. We're going to celebrate the diversity. We're going to celebrate all these things. And right now, we have betrayed, not you and I, but our country has now betrayed these people so profoundly, because now, it's not a mistake I'm flying a trans flag with colors here, right? So we're be who you are, we embrace you, all that kind of stuff. Now you're illegal.
Right.
And we're literally making it illegal for you to exist in certain states and certain places. You don't exist on the federal level. And I just think that the profound betrayal we have done to these people in our country is absolutely heartbreaking and terrifying.
Well, that's why even that gesture as you is important, only because that global we it's just all of it is terrible, and it's just terrible that it's happening, but it's not real, right? That just because it's illegal or somebody signs an executive order doesn't make these people poof disappear, right? It doesn't make these communities not. Legal. I catch your point. My point is that
it puts them under threat.
Yeah, sure, for sure, yes, and that's why allyship is so important now, because you got to keep speaking it into existence, right? We can't allow things to be ignored. I want to catch this point before we move forward, but speaking of betraying, one of my major bugaboos is such that where I grew up in a very suburban, upper middle class. I don't, not even really, but on the outskirts of blue collar Philadelphia, where like people had just moved into a middle class that is kind of dwindling and basically doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And we were force fed down like almost a cattle chute. Basically, you have to go to college or you have no chance at a future, because you got to learn computers, you got to learn this, you got to advance skill set. And by doing that to a generation, we forced open a huge workforce of laborers, right, that had to get filled, and thus got filled with what makes our country great, which is immigrants, people moving in and diversifying our country. And now, what do we tell kids? I have my whole family is educators. I work with educators. I work in education. We're telling kids, college, go get a trade. Learn to be a tradesperson, because that's where the money is, that's where the need is. And you're like, well, we created this vacuum. We did it.
And that's another bait and switch and betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
We have a statue and an island devoted to please come and diversify and make our country bigger and bolder and more diverse. Now, whack-a-mole, never mind.
Unless you're rich or skilled. Then
unless you're rich, unless you can buy the gold card. It's heartbreaking. Anyway,
what are we
I don't even know
about?
how we got here. I have no idea how we got here. Yeah, but you know what? This is why the Patron comments are the best part, because they facilitate interesting conversations.
Keith, hold on, I've just stumbled upon something.
Okay, what's that?
Totally unique and absolutely a gold mine. What do you think about this? A podcast where two white guys yell about politics for hours.
What?
Right? Like, that feels unique.
I mean, I certainly don't listen to like 6 of them already.
Yeah, but like white guys.
What if only one of them has a beard? Oh, I don't know if that breaks the rules. Anyway, YouTube viewer says,
what's up, YouTube?
The Cardassians occupied Bajor for 50 years, but Dukat was not in charge for 50 years. He was only in charge for the tail end of the Cardassian occupation. Cardassians live a little bit longer than humans, but not that much. At some point in the previous episode recap, Mike said something about threading optimistic heroism with dark realities. By that, wow, Mike, that sounds very smart for you to say.
Did I?
Oh, goodness. By that metric, Inquisition succeeded brilliantly. Of all the Federation-based antagonists in Deep Space Nine, and there are lots of them, Sloane is my favorite, hands down. Pretty much all the Federation-based antagonists are not evil per se, they have a drastically different version of good than the protagonists do. And is that not also the world, exactly the thing we're talking about? I think very few of the protagonists or antagonists in this country, based on where you stand, I doubt very many of them genuinely believe they're doing evil. Anyway, YouTube continues.
Well, I mean, I guess it comes down to, and I'll just leave this very broad. What you believe the greater good is, right?
Right. Who are you fighting for? Does it extend beyond this?
Yeah. What is acceptable loss, which is another. This episode and last week, I think, are an incredible 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
As far as tandem thematic episodes, incredible.
Yeah. And it is sort of a, I mean, we're not even into it yet, but it is sort of a transition. I don't think it's a loss of innocence for the Federation in the larger sense, but I think it is a wider eyes being opened up about just the realities of the universe beyond the idealities. There's no ideals. There's idealities, not a word, but something like that of the universe. Anyway, we'll get there. YouTube continues, if I was writing a philosophy thesis paper based on the ethical dilemmas of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I would say that the show constantly pits protagonists using some variation of Kant ethical imperative versus utilitarianism. With a few examples, the show seems to take the side of ethical imperative thinking as preferable to utilitarianism. I would argue that in order to work, utilitarianism requires the decision makers to have a perfect knowledge of the outcomes of each possible decision. I believe if you do not have perfect knowledge, then the Kantian ethical imperative is a better approach to morality. 96 out of 100. Holographic conspiratorial stem bolts. I mean, yeah, ethical imperative versus utilitarianism. I like, we could talk about that for the next 2 hours. And I think you're right. That is the perspective of the show, of Star Trek itself, right? You know, there is a sort of like an ethical ideal that everyone holds up to. And it's not necessarily the decision is not a pragmatist's kind of decision-making process in the Federation as a whole. I agree with you there. You know, I think that the real life, you kind of have to use a little bit of both. Just in order to exist in this complex universe. Anyway, fascinating. Another podcast.
Ebbs and flows.
JD says, British scones are different from what we call scones here in the States. They are more like what we consider biscuits. Yeah, you know what? They looked like biscuits. Maybe that's why I was so excited about that. We don't, JD, we don't have a lot of biscuits up here in the Northeast.
There's a whole world of foods, Keith, that the British do really interestingly. I have a British buddy I tour with a lot, and he has introduced me to all of the different teas and the different types of finger foods and biscuits and cookies and foods that you eat on holidays and all kinds of cool stuff. I will say that whereas we go for more of a quantity over quality scenario here in the States, they have very tiny little, very tasty finger foods. Now, some of their cookies and biscuits, less tasty.
You need that tea because they're made out of dust.
Yeah, but I appreciate the specificity in which they set up their meal schedule.
Okay, well, there you go. JD continues, happy birthday to Jen. Now I need to send her a gift, perhaps a referee hat. Mike, if you are fascinated by the bonobo thing, I have a book for you.
Somebody, I forget who in the comments, also saw that video I was talking about, which really love our audience, man.
I was trying to explain to Jillian what the heck you were talking about.
Yeah.
She only heard like my half of the conversation. She's like, what were you talking about? I'm like, what we were actually talking about was weirder than anything you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I had a small exchange with her as well about it.
So JD says, I have a book for you to check out. Get Sex and God by Dr. Daryl Ray. Fantastic and informative.
I will do that.
Cool. I also used Star Trek as a source for a paper in college. It's a more universal experience than I assumed. I would imagine a lot of us use Star Trek as a reference for something in college. William Sadler's best role outside of Sloane was death in Bill and Ted's movies. No, despite my family's weird stuff, we all said fart. What did my when I was growing up, I don't think we even, as a family, acknowledged it. Scott and I, my little brother and I, we acknowledged it a great deal. We wrote a lot of songs about it, but
yeah, my dad loved to really celebrate.
Yeah, no, my parents were much more buttoned up than that. But there we go.
We play great concerned citizens.
18 gigawatts. Touchdown. Amazing.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
JD finishes. This is such a fantastic episode for me. It's a great one. 96 self-sealing stem bolts. Mike, you should do a Section 31 movie watch-along.
You just told me it was trash, though.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't do a watch-along.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, do you think that people watch us because we're good?
It's a salient point.
Yeah, certainly not. You know, not when we're both sick. Alan T. Girton says, I hadn't watched the episode since it first aired, and I didn't recall all the plot holes it fixed and filled. If only the showrunners of Lost had taken notes. Yeah. Definitely 87. Sinister, Sadler, stem bolts. Love it.
We talk about synchronicity a lot. My wife, brother, and I were sitting around the campfire the other night, and we had a really interesting conversation about Lindelof and how, you know, I've come because I think I've said it before. One of my absolute favorite television properties, bar none, period, is The Leftovers. It was on HBO, 3 seasons,
yes.
and he set out to write that as a 3-season arc, from the beginning to the end, and was incredibly successful in my opinion. Versus when you're given a blank check, right, and you're like, you got to keep this baby going, and it's tough to keep a mystery like that, an esoteric mystery like that, going, not knowing when the ending is, because it's hard to kind of plan that ground. So I think that, though, to be fair, I've never watched Lost all the way through, so I can't speak to the criticism of it. I will say that my guess is that had a lot to do with it.
I mean, honestly, I've watched them both, and I don't think either one of them really figured out what was happening.
I think season 2 of The Leftovers is maybe the best season of television I've ever watched, and 3 is right behind it. So, I mean, I guess different structure, different folks.
Very, very, very compelling, very well written, very well acted. Still, what? But I don't know. I need to watch it again. But
yes, I would agree. I definitely came remembering, the weeping. But that said, when you make pieces of art that are not completely linear, it's not going to hit everybody, right? Because not everybody's brain works that way.
Well, and Lindelof he's always exploring, sort of like you two view. It's more of a philosophical discussion than plot machinations.
I would agree. Yeah, it's a philosophical discussion channeled through a very personal, singular, emotional journey of a person. So that's
right.
Yeah.
Even if the plot doesn't make any sense. Okay.
Agreed
So,
to
and lastly, John B. just a very good quick comment. Chekhov's gun in this episode was O'Brien's shoulder.
Yes.
You darn right it was. Well
I can't,
done.
Why that won't stay in my head, and I keep saying Schrodinger's cat, which is a totally different thing.
Completely different.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of like, what was that movie I kept trying to reference and doing the wrong one?
Yeah, no, it's also a phrase. Well spotted. Okay, let's talk about In the Pale Moonlight, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, big moment in Star Trek.
That was only 23
history.
minutes. That was pretty good for us. Oh wait, I forgot about the 2 times we restarted, so that was about a half hour.
We started an hour ago. All right. This aired on April 15th, 1998. Still, the top song. All My Life, Casey and JoJo.
All my life, I wait for someone like you to do lots of shitty, illegal shit and not let us get caught, but maybe blow up an ambassador and perhaps send me directly to hell if you believe in that sort of a thing. But, you know, ultimately, they've got the Romulans in, so I gotta imagine it was pretty good.
The greater good. The top movie continued to be City of Angels. Nick Cage and Meg Ryan. Mike, what was on TV
Keith,
tonight?
I
mean,
to tell
why
you.
you should be watching anything else, I don't understand.
Well, because perhaps you love Michael J. Fox, and you know he was heading up ABC's 8 o'clock block with Spin City. I liked the first season of that show. We also had The Nanny was rolled up. Nanny was so popular, they were doing 2 episodes, right? They did the 8 o'clock slot and the 8:30 slot. Crazy. Keith, remember News Radio?
I do.
Did I ever tell you that we had this great thing? For Christmas one year, my brother wanted to get my sister the Newsroom because she was really interested in watching the Newsroom but didn't have HBO. So he bought her a DVD set for Christmas. Turns out, didn't buy the Newsroom. He purchased her News Radio on DVD, which is not that. Yeah.
That is 100% what I thought you meant.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the mix-up. So for the next 5 years, this is back when my siblings and I all really got along. We the joke was someone would wrap up, whoever had it that year would wrap it up and gift the DVD complete set of News Radio to somebody, because I think it was like an Andy Dick sitcom, if I'm not mistaken.
Phil Hartman and Kids in the Hall guy. Wait. Okay. So this actually might answer. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I can't wait, actually.
I have, in my life, somehow, a DVD copy of News Radio.
It's gotta be from me.
I think I might have been the final resting place
because none of us have
that DVD set.
It must be, yeah. That feels like a joke I would have done to you randomly. Yeah.
I feel like I've been carrying that around for 6 different apartments. I've never watched it.
No.
But,
who has?
I have multiple times wait, why do I have a DVD set of this?
That's really funny.
Am I the final resting place?
It makes sense. Anyway.
Did I throw it out, or do I still have it? All right, stay tuned next week. I'm going to see if I still own. I don't have anything that plays a DVD.
Here's how bad it must have been doing. They put it on at 8 p.m., followed by Seinfeld, right? They hoped that people would just catch enough of it by tuning into. They think they would go back, because Seinfeld used to be 8 o'clock. So they were like, maybe people will tune in for Seinfeld and catch News Radio, hopefully. It did not work.
I mean, I saw a couple of episodes. It was perfectly good. It was fine as a sitcom, whatever.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying it wasn't the Newsroom, which actually most people hated too. Anyway, Third Rock from the Sun, also Law and Order, Beverly Hills 90210, Ally McBeal, Smart Guy, Sister, Tia and Tamara, love it, and the Wayans Brothers. Keith, that's what's on TV.
Okay. What was Voyager doing? The Omega Directive. Very interesting episode. Okay. In the Pale Moonlight was directed by Victor Lobel, who last directed Who Mourns for Morn. And there we can see some of the direction happening there. But I mean, every time I see the behind the scenes of them working on the show, that set.
Yeah.
So cool with the lighting and so immersive. It's really, really cool. It was written by Peter Allen Fields, who last wrote for The Uniform. I feel like there's nothing trivial in this episode, but if I can find some... waste your time.
With what?
With trivial trivia. Okay, the idea for Sisko to slowly undress in the episode as it progresses, other than just being hot, was director Victor Lobel's idea, who saw it as serving a double function. On one hand, Sisko was loosening and removing his clothing was simply to convey the passage of time as he paced around the room. On the other, it was the thematic metaphor for how Sisko narrates his log. He is literally bearing his soul. Good nonverbal storytelling. Vreenak is on his way back from Sakara when he diverts to Deep Space Nine. Do you remember what that planet is? Because we were just there.
I don't remember now.
It's the planet visited by Jadzia and Worf on the rendezvous with the Cardassian double agent in the jungle with all of the
snakes.
With all Jack Hanna's.
Remember, we could not remember his name last time, and we both came up with it lickety split.
Which is weird because neither of our brains are functioning at all right now.
No.
It happens. According to Ronald D. Moore, the title of the episode was a reference to the phrase, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" from the film Batman.
Oh!
Moore said he initially thought the phrase was much older until colleagues and fans kept asking him whether he was making a Batman reference. So at least according to this, it's not from the Bible, it's from Batman, but he thought it was an old reference.
Cool.
Hilarious. And also, you know what that really tells you? Google did not exist the way it does today in 1998, where you would wait, what is that from? Click, and you'd know immediately.
You know, I just recently revisited Batman, the 1989 classic Batman.
Sure.
Friggin' awesome.
Of course it was friggin' awesome.
Really stands out how, less good 2 was, but still okay. And then 3 was just an absolute trash hole.
I liked 2. I think 2 is underrated.
Yeah, because I really liked Danny DeVito's performance in that, actually.
It was great.
Yeah.
But I remember...
And
okay,
Tommy Lee Jones, right? Was Two-Face in that?
that was in 3.
Oh, with Riddler and Schwarzenegger. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was
It was
bad.
Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, but I this is for the folks, old folks, but I figure most of us are. The Batman, when that first came out for rental on VHS.
That was just the black front with the gold symbol on it. Yeah.
And that was one of the first major like video store hard ones to get. We had to reserve it in order to get it from.
And there was like
VHS.
you used to get more of a fine if those weren't returned in time. And sometimes it was like a 24-hour rental.
It was definitely a 24-hour rental, and but I remember that was the first time we had like a hard time getting our hands on the rental for that.
Listen, I have to tell you, old guys sitting and talking about the past. I'm with Keith. I'm with Keith. I don't, as much as I still go to the movies, and I do much prefer, subsequent to like my built studio or my theater now, I much prefer watching stuff here. But I will say I do miss the function of going to that VHS place.
Yeah.
The smells, walking the aisles, making a selection. Sometimes there was no Google machine to see if the movie was good. It was like,
nope.
Is the cover cool? And does the girl I'm with want to watch it?
I never had that problem. And it's not because she wanted to watch everything.
The popcorn bucket they put in the front, all the candy, like it was set up like a movie theater. And like if you had a cool one, the dude would talk with you and let you know. Unfortunately, it was always dudes.
Always.
Product of the time. I do miss that, I have to say. You don't get that on the Netflix carousel.
No, you don't. And in Vermont, it was, we had 2 video stores.
Suncoast?
We didn't have
Blockbuster?
No chains.
Yep.
No, it was Blockbuster, not Blockbuster. It was, I forget. Anyway, there were 2, at some point there were 3 in my town of like 2,500 people, because there's nothing much to do. So we just had a bunch of, but yeah, being able to walk the stores.
It was cool.
Like, it was.
It didn't have that experience, or if you want to go down this memory lane with us, I will say there's a great documentary. It's called The Last Blockbuster. I can't remember. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. And
on Netflix.
Yeah, it's both a celebration of this guy who held on way longer than well after it went out of business, but also just kind of the experience. It goes back. Did you watch it? Have you watched it?
No.
It's really it's a cool doc, so I recommend it.
And of course, like if you want to do it right, none of this DVD nonsense. VHS tapes. That's what you want to be looking for.
Well, that was Netflix's first big disruption, right? They started sending out and it was fledgling at the beginning, because originally they would send out just DVDs, and then.
And I don't know if Blockbuster had them, but of course, the focal point of every video store was that little booth with the beads that you had to walk through.
Or like saloon cowboy doors.
Saloon cowboy doors, sure. And like, yeah.
So this is the last anecdote that we can move forward. So I remember as a kid walking by that area and peeking through, right?
Sure.
See if you could see anything. And I'll never forget, Keith. I saw a video, and I remember the title vividly in my head, because at the time it made no sense to me.
Oh, sure.
But it does now.
Yeah.
It was called They Came from Planet Butt.
They came from Planet Butt? How was that not on your Plex? How is that not available right now?
I don't know. Because my mom has access to Plex.
When are you giving your parents access to your Plex? That's crazy. That's really, really funny. Yeah, for me, like, I remember getting in a big fight with one of the video stores to the point where I would not go in there ever again because I tried to rent Species, but I was only 16 or 17 or something like that, because it was R.
They had ours pulled aside too?
No, they just wouldn't let me rent it by myself. I went in there, and I'm like, I saw it in the theaters. Now, why did I see it in the theaters and why did I want to rent it again? Well, it wasn't for the sci-fi content, but I remember that was like a...
I recall going up to a ticket. You used to buy. Remember, it used to be a human being you bought your ticket from at the movie theater. I remember getting turned away from an R-rated movie too, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was like Alien or something.
Alien? That would have been in 1979.
Yeah, like one of the Alien movies. It was something sci-fi, but we couldn't get in.
You know, I bet it was Alien 3, because that was 93, I think.
Me and Ronnie
13.
went.
That would have been the... You and Ronnie?
Yeah.
Oh, to Alien 3. That's amazing. Anyway, that's been your video store segment.
Oh, we're old and sick.
Okay, exactly. That's exactly what's happening right now. So at the 50th anniversary Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, as of 2016, this episode was voted by fans to be the second best episode of all of Star Trek.
Damn, next to what?
Only behind City on the Edge of Forever from the original series. Crazy.
Cool.
The first draft of this script was centered around Jake and his discovery during the course of his activities as a journalist that his father and Garak were masterminding a plan to get Romulus into the war. Jake does not appear in the final episode at all. What an interesting idea. I think it's better without it, but I would love to have an episode where Jake discovers his dad doing something nefarious and being torn as to what to do as a journalist.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because it does actually, that addresses one of, that's not a problem of mine, it's a question I have kind of overall, is like, the episode presents this journal entry as a one take, right? Like a one shot. Like he sits down and goes through the whole thing over a long period of time, right? It doesn't look like he's coming back and forth.
Right. Which is all over one night. But
in the beginning of it, if I recall, he is very much cannot remember how long ago it was. Like I can't remember the date. Like it was long ago, but it was so confused. Like it clearly wasn't yesterday this happened, right?
Right.
So why he waited to, like, why now am I going to talk through this? Because it very much reads to me like my initial thought was that he's doing it right after it's a fake and before the resolution, because that would be a way for him to kind of present why he did. Clearly everybody's going to find out, so let me present why I did this. But then clearly it's not that, because the ending happens.
Well, right.
So anyway.
What I think it is this is not for anybody. Mm-hmm. This is just for himself. And
he does a personal log, right?
He's having a drunken dark night of the soul, and he's just talking himself through it. This isn't for anybody. He deletes it. He can't.
But did he think he was going to delete it at the end? Like in the beginning when he starts it?
Well, he knows no one can ever know.
Right.
Like no one can ever know that this happened. So I don't
know that he knew in the beginning.
He had to. Well,
I don't know. Why start the recording then? Why start it only to delete it? Even starting, you know as well as I do, future or present, nothing's deleted, right? Or nothing is 100% deleted. So there is somewhere in his psyche.
This was 1998. They didn't realize.
You could just put a magnet on the thing. Surprisingly still works for a lot of stuff. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Did he know he was going to delete it when he pressed record?
He had to have.
I don't know.
Like this is like national security, like eyes only, murder you if you find out.
I think he knew at some point. He's like, at some point, the right thing to do is to have this confession, and I want to have it on tape, so it's documented, and then he's like, you know what? In order to live with it, I can never mention this again. I think it's more impactful if it's a decision.
That's interesting. All right, we'll have to, like, when we get through the end of it, we can have this discussion again, because I think it's really interesting. So Captain Sisko is seen drinking out of the same old-fashioned whiskey glass that Deckard drinks from Blade Runner.
200% tariff on that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It was made by an Italian glassmaker. Cool, nice reference there to sort of much darker sci-fi that this is sort of living in the waters of a little bit. So based on the number of casualty reports Sisko says he's posted in the wardroom, it has been 14 weeks since Starfleet retook Deep Space Nine. To put things in context there. Originally, the writers were going to have the Dominion invade Vulcan, not Beta Z. Which would have been good for Mike, who didn't remember the importance of Beta Z, but he did remember the importance of Vulcan. The episode was structured
I don't like that term remember. Recall. Because once you say it, I then remember. So I just didn't recall.
Okay. I recall that as a distinction, not a difference, but but I do see what you're saying. The episode is structured so that at that moment Sisko begins to waver as to whether or not to carry his scheme on, the planet falls to the Dominion, serving to galvanize his resolve. But the writers didn't want to invent a new planet or name somewhere inconsequential, because we wouldn't care. They wanted a planet that would carry weight for the viewers, and they ultimately narrowed it down to Vulcan and Beta Z. They initially decided on Vulcan, but changed their minds when it came to the realization that Vulcan just carried too much weight. This is a great window into writers' rooms and how each of these things are consequential and have a lot of specific information. And I don't remember, but somebody out here knows better. I think Vulcan is a lot closer to Earth than Beta Z. But I think... So that would also perhaps push the story, past where they want to go at that point. I don't really know. And lastly, and I think this if I were in this marriage, this would come up every damn day. Actor Stephen McHattie, who plays Vreenek, was married to Meg Foster, who played the title role in the season 4 episode The Muse. Remember the lady with the forehead and the pan and the Jake? So that, spoiler alert, on the IMDb rankings, one half of the marriage was, one of the very best episodes of Deep Space Nine ever, and the other half of the marriage was in the third worst episode of Deep Space Nine ever, and I feel like I would bring that up over coffee every single morning.
Yeah.
But what a cool little yin and yang there.
Well, that reminds me, Keith, of... I knew this couple, and one of them was 40-some years old and was on the train to New York for a callback for a summer stock that did not book. And the other one was rehearsing for a gig at Carnegie Hall. I remember that.
Yeah.
The yin and yang speaks to me.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think of an ex-couple. Yeah. One of which is
on TV. I just put on my Plex.
Debuted a three episode arc on a prestige drama. Right.
But did the other one by any chance sit in the basement and talk about bonobo asses?
Yes, the other one talks about Deep Space Nine in his basement. So it's basically the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Basically the same thing.
Nailing it.
Yeah. Guys, check out Long Bright River on Peacock. Really, really good. We watched the first 2 episodes last night. Great. All right, our guest stars this week are Andrew J. Robinson as Garak. Whew! In the Garakiest of every episode.
Oh, yeah.
Jeffrey Combs as Wei-Yun, Casey Biggs as Damar, Howard Shengra as Graylin Tothar, and Stephen McHattie as Vreenek. Not a fake. You want to know who else we would never fake or try to deceive?
Keith, that would be the K&M patrons.
Yes!
Brian Kimber Beersuck, Peter Bank, Frank Rinch, Quarks Bar, Yanba, Ryan Chesley, Andre, Romulan Shoulder Pad Enjoyer, Jamie Lubin, Jason Moe, Deborah.
Welcome to the team, Deborah.
So many pips.
Welcome back, yes.
Joshua Cronin and Mike, almost all the pips. Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the Mysterious, Worf Boot Shibs, Charles Babbage, John Kelly, Keith Blank, Harry Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher, Alan Girton, Deborah Scott, and Tren, Chancellor Jen, Brian from Video Game Drive-By, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, YouTube viewer, Odo's Bucket, James Huppard, Lost Emu, Hibernation Pod, Scotty B, Miri Holcomb, Merritt Neath, Rogue Knight, welcome, 86 and Company, welcome, JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell at CRM, Frank Rinch, Pat, Joshua Cronin, Kevin Miles, Engineer Maynard, Jerome Gibson, DC Chanel, Fedora the Explorer, Bolian for soup. Welcome, everybody. Lutz Crummer, Wyatt Eldridge, Kevin Miles, Ryan Caputo, different Caputo. Don't be confused. Of course. Oh man.
And here, I'll do. And welcome.
Hold on. I have to recycle the audio. Okay.
Okay, great. I can Don Pardo. And now, the Patron Hall of Fame. Casey Clark, Ryan Kaufman, Jason Moe, Joshua Cronin, The Mysterious Hand, Andrew Hayes, Wars Butchivs, Colin Dagan, Quarks Bar, Peter Benke, CRM Productions, welcome, Jennifer Mazzanova, Cloud Lover 69, Jorge Navoa, Charles Babbage, Kevin Miles, Frank Rynch, Bryant Kimball Beersack, JD, CRM Productions again, because I didn't realize he was already there. Ryan Chesley, Yunba, and new this week, Anton Thies, Meredith Neath, and Harry Pothead.
Thanks, everybody.
Now we can say whatever we want because nobody's watching.
No, man. The fact that was 3 slides and 2 cycles of that music is humbling. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate your support. It means more than you think.
For sure. All right. Now listen to what we think. Let's go into the screening room. Shouldn't have done that when I have a cold.
Yeah, me neither.
Meaning anything. Okay, folks. In the Pale Moonlight. Honestly, like I was thinking in the middle of the night last night, I feel pressure talking about this episode.
I do not.
Well, because you just don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
So yeah, here we are in the teaser.
Oh, Keith also feels pressure because he had to write the summary twice.
I did, because after giving Mike a lot of crap for forgetting to press record on the watch along, I then came back and realized my computer had rebooted in the middle of the night, and I hadn't pressed save.
And wasn't it just a week
recap.
before that you were like, I gotta start saving it as a separate file. I keep using the same file, and it's gonna bite me in the ass one time.
It's not good.
It's crazy when you know something and then it happens and you're like, what? I can't even be mad. I knew it.
I believe that's being in your 40s. Just in general.
To quote Sisko, when I think about sometimes my 40-year-old malaise laziness, I can live with it.
Malaziness? That's a good word.
I'm like, I just don't want to go upstairs. I know I should do XYZ, but it would require me going upstairs.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Not good. All right, in our teaser, a distraught and perhaps a little drunk Sisko begins narrating a personal log. He has a tale to tell, and we are not going to like it. He narrates right through the soft fourth wall.
Ooh, it's looking at my soul.
Which is such a great choice, because we don't really have any precedent for this. So we establish immediately this is not a regular episode. Because first off, we have, it's been 2 weeks, and he can't remember what day it is.
I don't have a ton of money right now, Keith, because, house. But this screenshot is the one that made me be like, I want that Cisco-esque X06.
Yeah.
Really want it, because it looks just like this. This is
yeah. I mean, this is the most iconic Sisko is ever going to
get. Look at that. Okay.
But from a storytelling perspective, right in the first line of the episode, we see somebody stumble over a line, stumble over information. This never happens on Star Trek. We don't make mistakes. We don't stumble over stuff like that, especially a captain. And so it's really jarring. And then he looks straight at the camera. It's like, okay, all right, I'm paying attention. Something crazy is happening right now. And it's a production choice, sort of doing the soft break of the fourth wall. And then the writing, it's just such good stuff.
Someone made the decision that this story is better if he's telling it rather than just us watching it unfold.
And telling it retroactively, which I love episodes structured that way. We can't have every episode be that way, but when it happens that way, I love it. So it's been 2 weeks since something, and he has nobody to talk to it about but the computer. It began when he was posting the casualty lists in the wardroom, a grim task he has done every Friday. The Starfleet personnel all gather around to see which of their friends and loved ones have been wounded, are missing, or are dead. The war is going badly. The Romulans, who signed a non-aggression treaty with the Dominion, are ignoring the Dominion making sneak attacks out of their territory. In the only imperfect beat in the episode, in my opinion, Sisko explains this to Dax and Worf and Bashir, i.e. the audience, despite them all knowing that already, reminding us essentially the Romulans signed a treaty in season 5 that says we're staying out of it. And so, like, I understand from a production standpoint, you have to remind the audience that that's what happened, but that felt like, guys, Dax knows. Yeah. Bashir then proposes the big swing. He says, what we need is to bring the Romulans into the war on our side. With the combined forces of the Federation, the Klingons, and the Romulans, we could finally go on the offensive. He does not say it aloud, but this is the moment Sisko decides to put the plan into action. And so Sisko has a lot of voiceovers from the present over this, and this is one of them. And he says, this was the moment I made the decision. It was like I'd stepped through a door and locked it behind me. I was going to bring the Romulans into the war. What an amazing setup. Like, okay, that's our objective for the episode. The stakes couldn't be higher, and you had to be reminded that the Romulans had worked with us previously. That's why we have a cloak on the Defiant before they backed out.
And what's cool about this plot, or the necessity of the plot, the stakes, is that the Romulans, you can't fault them for their decision making right now. There's no reason for them to choose a side, and they're sort of in a neutral, non-aggression situation, so their hand does need to be forced.
Well,
they don't seem like the type that's just like in it for righteousness, right? Like the long arm of history.
They're adversaries with us. I mean, and they have been this whole time, and they've always stood in for Russia, right? But now they're trying to be Switzerland. Like, you know what? Leave us out of this. But
me and my family.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like, look, good luck with everybody. I'm gonna, sit over here. But the Romulans do not have a mountain range that they live in. So in Act 1, Sisko and Dax do a mock debate, exploring how the Romulans would react to the Federation telling them they should join the war. And Sisko says, you can't be naive enough to think the Dominion will stop with the Federation. When they're finished with us, they'll be coming after you. That's speculation. The Founders see it as their sacred duty to bring order to the galaxy. Their order. Do you think they'll sit idly by and let you keep your chaotic empire next to their perfect order? No. If you watch us go under, what you're really doing is writing your own death warrant. You're asking me to start a war based on wild theories. These are not theories, they're facts. Prove it. I thought that I love them doing this mock debate here. It does a lot of sort of storytelling work, but also I think that's how they would be operating. How do you practice making it's like a mock debate. And they're two very smart, and remember, Dax has been a diplomat for a very long time.
Well, yeah, very long time.
And of course, the parallels, and I thought this all through the episode, the parallels to the Russia-Ukraine situation here are super obvious. And it's really interesting to see.
Dude, you're not even, the whole back and forth, even the preliminary back and forth that's taking place is really interesting to me, because I'm about to say words I never thought I'd say. Right?
Let's hear it.
So, once again, like if you just look at the end of a conflict, right? It's very easy to say, hey, you know what? Let's start with just ceasefire. Let's stop shooting at each other. right?
Right.
And you're like, okay, that seems easy enough. But then you start to look, when you remember any of the stuff, it's like, well, we're not just shooting at such and such. We're protecting ourselves because we got invaded. At the same time, Putin, his initial response actually makes sense, right? From his standpoint, at least, where you're like, well, hold on. I like the idea of not being at a war, but there's a lot of you can't just say we made a deal, right? There's some specifics. Now, I don't agree with his specifics, but like there is nuance to this. You can't just be like, I'm making a deal, right? And this is where we are, right? There's nuance on each level. Like the Romulans have nuance, the Founders have nuance. The Founders, guess what? You came into our quadrant, yo. This is on you.
Yeah. Well, and I think what we're finding on all of these, both in real life and out of it, there's a cost to everything. Mm-hmm. And there is a cost to action. There is also a cost to inaction. And like nothing is free. So like, again, thinking a ceasefire right this very minute, sure, yeah, that's okay. But the cost of a ceasefire as they're talking, where Putin gets to keep the territory that he took illegally, is then rewarding him for invading another country. And the cost of that...
What's the nuance he's asked for? He's asked for, they're not allowed to train or gain any armament during the ceasefire.
And so the cost of all of that is he is now incentivized to do it again. So you are like, there's less fighting. Is there? Is there really less? Is there going to be less fighting in the large scheme if we have less fighting right now? And so like this is the whole battle that Sisko's going through here, going the Romulans too. Okay, so you're saving some ships today, or is it going to cost you more ships later? That is their argument. Their argument is you have to fight now to have less fighting. And you have to make some sacrifices now to make fewer sacrifices later, and it's hard and it's complex and it's as they say in this episode, it's bloody business. It is imperfect business.
It's also, you have to look at the scale or not the scale, the sort of where the scoreboard is. Currently, it's looking like we're gonna lose, right? Like we're definitely not winning. It's not even tied. We're definitely at a detriment here. So that factors into the Romulan thinking. In fact, he makes a reference to that when he first comes on board. Romulan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like when you're dealing with, it used to be that the Romulans were a stand-in for the Russians. Now I think the Dominion Russian parallel is pretty straightforward. And so it's like the argument they didn't make in this, which would, I think, it did not quite work out, but it's the argument that Ukraine is certainly making, and I think accurately so. Okay, you can support us, and we'll fight this war on our territory, right? With our troops. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than if you're having to start to fight this war on your territory, because that's what's coming next. Like every dollar you're spending now is not, it's our village being destroyed and not yours.
But so it's worth noting too, he doesn't mention to Dax his plan though. He's just debating.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, and as a teaser for you listening, I have a cut scene which is going to be very interesting to read as it relates to that. So Sisko needs evidence that the Dominion will betray the Romulans, and he assumes it must be somewhere on Cardassia. So of course, we go to our simple tailor super spy, Garak. And Sisko says, it's time to call in a favor to get this evidence from Cardassia. And Garak says, well, it'd mean calling in all of my favors, Captain. To do what you're asking would use up every resource I have left on Cardassia, and it may be very messy, a very bloody business. Are you prepared for that? And Sisko says, I posted my 14th casualty list this morning. I'm already involved in a very messy, very bloody business, and the only way I can see to end that is to bring the Romulans into the war.
Point of order.
Yes?
I want to put a pin. Then you can continue.
Pin.
What I love about Garak in this episode, thinking back now.
Yeah.
Actually, remember we have to read, there are some great posts about this in the Patron comments, Keith, for next week when we go last week's episode. I didn't read them thoroughly because I kind of wanted to have this conversation without other people's theories and such in my head, but it looked interesting. But I do want to watch again and kind of pinpoint Garak's obfuscation for Sisko, right? I think there's a plausible deniability he does, right? I think there's some of that at play, but also, you know, Garak always has an element of setting himself up for the future. First thing he says here is, this is going to cost all my favors. As I think back, it's very possible he didn't call in any favors, that he orchestrated and executed this without anyone knowing and utilizing anything else except because the explosive he gets from Sisko. The only the bad guy he needed, or the patsy that he sets up, he acquired from Sisko. He doesn't seem to me that he called in much, maybe some info stuff, but, you know, just the intelligence gathering. But I don't know if that was already, he might have already started his BS.
So did you read Brian's comment?
I did not,
emailed
no.
to me? Very interesting, because you both have a very similar theory, and we're going to talk about it, and I think it's fascinating.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it seems to me like he's operating on two levels here.
Yeah, so like, what Garak is saying is the truth versus the lie? Unclear. Surprise. But Garak says he's in, and Sisko continues narrating from the present. He says, I laid the first stone right here. I'd committed myself. I'd pay the price, go to any lengths, because my cause was righteous. My intentions were good. In the beginning, that seemed like enough. And he will reference, set up this doom, plant the seeds for, like, this didn't go well, bad things happen, without telling us what, but continue adding this ominous tone to everything.
I love this crap. So let's talk about incredible acting, right? When you see incredible acting taking place, let's highlight it. So look at Sisko's face. We don't need to hear any of the dialogue. You know exactly the stakes, right?
Yeah.
You know exactly the weight of this for him. But let's go to Garak. What? The body language is leaning forward. Remember, he's discussed how bored as hell he is on the ship. There's nothing to do. And then this face. Glee.
Yeah.
Right? You don't even have to hear anything or know the episode. You know exactly. Whereas somebody is ruining this and somebody is reveling in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Garak's having fun. Garak is having fun here.
That's a man who's not having fun right there.
No. Yeah, good point. So in Act 2, Sisko was awakened in the middle of the night by Kira. She has bad news. Beta Z has been taken by the Dominion. This is very bad news. Of course, Beta Z, now Mike knows, is the home planet of our Troys.
That's what I take for my nerves. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. No.
So the Dominion is advancing fast.
Can Mike capture everyone blinking in 2 screenshots alone?
Oh, it's great. The greatest podcast. The Dominion is advancing fast, and we are continually getting caught with our pants down. It's been 3 days, so Sisko goes to check on Garak's progress. And Garak says, I share your desire for swift action, Captain. In fact, after our last conversation, I made a few discreet inquiries among my former associates still living on Cardassia. As I anticipated, they shared my loathing for the current government, and they were more than willing to take on the assignment aimed at its destruction. Sounds like progress to me, doesn't it? Unfortunately, they're all dead now. What? Yes, all killed within 1 day of speaking to me. I suppose it's a testament to the effectiveness of Dominion security. One should admire such efficiency. And Sisko says, I'm sorry. And Avery's take on I'm sorry is really beautifully handled. Go back and watch it. Because Sisko, who never says I'm sorry, especially to Garak, he almost whispers it while avoiding eye contact from Garak. And there's so much guilt hidden underneath it. And I think it's an incredible take by Avery. He needs to say it. It's important to say it. But like there's so much shame in saying it.
And it should also, yes. And it shows his sort of inability, at least at this early juncture of this, to compartmentalize, right? He's responding and reacting in real time, whereas I think as we get further along the sort of situation, he has to further compartmentalize. And then rationalize when he gets to his log later.
Well, there is such a snowball effect of this entire thing. You know, if a mouse give a mouse a cookie, or an old lady who swallowed the fly, like it keeps escalating and escalating and escalating. But luckily, Garak has another plan. But he says, I suspect you won't like it. Try me. If you want to guarantee that we obtain evidence of a Dominion plan to attack the Romulans, I suggest we manufacture that evidence ourselves. Sisko continues the ominous drumbeat of regret tinged with justification from the present, and he says, maybe I should have put a stop to it right there. Said, thank you very much for your input, Mr. Garak. I'll take your suggestion under advisement. And then gone back to the office and forgotten the whole thing, but I didn't. Perhaps because in my heart, I knew what he was saying made sense. Which it does. I mean, it was sort of a big swing to just assume that was even the plan, let alone they'd be able to gain access to it. This makes more sense. So Garak lays out the plan. His name is Vreenak. He's a key member of the Romulan Senate for the past 14 years. He's secretary of the War Plans Council, vice chairman of the Tal Shiar, i.e. the Romulan Section 31 Obsidian Order, and one of the most trusted advisors to the Proconsul Neral. He's also the man who negotiated the non-aggression pact with the Dominion. Garak says, since you're familiar with him, I'll skip the rest of his biography. We don't have time. What's important is that he continues to be one of the most ardently pro-Dominion voices in the Senate. What's wrong with being friends with Russia? If we can convince him that the Dominion is a threat, the rest of the Senate will follow. Once again, good strategy. Don't convince your friends, convince your enemies. So he's going to be in the area, and Sisko is going to invite him to a super secret meeting at Deep Space Nine. And Garak says, well, once the senator arrives, you will show him a holographic recording of a secret meeting held at the highest levels of the Dominion, in which the planned invasion of Romulus is being discussed. You will tell the senator that this information was obtained through various covert means at great cost to the Federation. At least 10 good men lost their lives bringing it across the lines, that sort of thing. He will immediately suspect it's a forgery, but you will continue to assure him that such a thing would be impossible. So Garak is going to obtain a Cardassian security stick, i.e. a CDR, not a CDRW, so it can only be written on once. Remember those, kids? But that's the time period that we're in. So like, you know, a data thing that can only be written once, we were dealing with those all day long. But he needs a sketchy blue guy named Tolarto. That's what I wrote. That's not right. Tolar to create a holo program. Tolar is exactly who you think he is, flamboyantly slimy, until the mention of Garak, which makes him a great deal more serious and subservient.
Which, back to my original thesis that Garak is working on multiple levels here. Garak's going in knowing this guy's expendable and done for. I would love to know in our comic book of like other adventures happening what this dude did to Garak, because clearly he knows that Garak could kill him, so he better do whatever he wants, like Garak has something on him. And I want to know what that adventure was. Like, what led to that? What's that story? But whatever it is, they talked about it, because it is, we don't get to know, but they know.
He's terrified.
And that is the important thing with directing, right? Or writing. If you're going to like have a plot thread that took place in another time or previous, make sure you discuss it with the actors so they at least know.
Yeah. I mean, did Garak torture this guy? Or is this guy in the world in which the specter of Garak would be very scary? I feel like they know each other. But it's Yeah, it's interesting and great storytelling. And again, I think this guy's performance is
Really
great
good.
in this.
Really good.
And that beat shift is really well done.
Also, the design, incredible.
Yeah, he's blue, but he's not a...
Bullyhead!
It's pretty, it's really good design.
He's more of a pervian.
Yes. So he becomes a great deal more subservient when he hears about Garak, but not subservient enough not to drunkenly stab Quark, as, one is prone to doing. So in Act 3, after Odo arrests Tolar, Sisko has to go to Quark to ask him not to press charges. It's a very interesting dynamic that shows character change for both of them. Okay, number one, Quark was injured protecting the Dabo lady from being harassed. Not very Quarky Season 1-y. And in the bribes that he solicits from Sisko, he asks for her clothing to be replaced. Not just his. Very interesting change from Quark there. And two, Sisko's change is he agrees to every single one of Quark's demands completely. Willing to bribe him to the point where even Quark runs out of ideas. Which is crazy. And we're all waiting. We're all waiting for the enough, Quark. You've played your advantage enough. We never get it. Sisko's like, literally anything. And it's interesting that Quark doesn't push further.
No, I was going to say the opposite, right? Well, I'm interested thinking back. Would have been a great added storytelling beat, but I just didn't have time. The episode was so full. For Quark to clock that he gave in too easy.
Yeah.
Right? For him to be like, that's out of... Something's up. I want to know what's up.
Well, I think he would have had to have known something was up when he agreed to anything.
Yeah, fair.
Or that the ask was made.
Yeah.
Don't press charges against this guy who stabbed you. Like, something is clearly up right from there, but it's very interesting, the whole dynamic of that scene, which, I think you could argue that it feels very sort of weird and tacked on and arbitrary. Like, why do we have this whole stabbing Quark subplot? But the reason we do is to have this beat with Quark and Sisko, where Sisko, we're going to talk about how pot committed Sisko becomes. He has to keep digging himself further and further and further in. And
he's got to sell a couple Teslas on the lawn, you know what I mean? He's
got to sell some Teslas on the lawn because he owes $200 billion of campaign stuff. Buy it, everybody buy a Tesla. It's crazy.
It's awesome. This is great. It's all great.
So, Sisko says, bribery and cover-up. Those were new for me. That was my first moment of real doubt. I started to wonder if the whole thing was a mistake. Then, I got back to my office and there was a new casualty list waiting for me. People are dying out there every day. Entire worlds are struggling for their freedom, and here I am, still worrying about the finer points of morality. I had to keep my eye on the ball, winning the war, stopping the bloodshed. Those were my priorities. So Garak then secretly meets with Sisko for an update on the data rod. He can get one, but only for a giant amount of biomimetic gel, which of course can be used to do all sorts of awful things, including genetic experiments and super bioweapons.
I imagine, sorry, I keep bringing this back, but sometimes I need to just ground it for myself. I'm thinking about the pressure that Sisko's under in those moments, right? Yeah. Not only is he really flip-flopping on his sort of what he thought were ethics and morals and all those things you spend a whole life and career building, right? And then all of a sudden you're shitting on them. But in a way, versus plus the weight of all the casualties, right? I love the casualty list thing because it's just numbers, right? And it's piling up, and that pressure, right, on this one dude. It brings me back to the Oval Office a couple weeks ago when Zelensky's in there, right? And I imagine that pressure is a similar pressure, and then somebody throws something at you like, oh, but you're not wearing a tie. Why are you not wearing a suit? And you're like, the trivial nature of some of this BS versus the pressure people are under. It can break you, and it's
and yeah. I mean, talk about when you're walked intentionally into a trap.
Yeah. Yeah. but just like how you could possibly, what I'm talking about is like how you could focus on the day-to-day, right? And I think actually Sisko mentions that when he's doing his reports or whatever, when you've got this gigantic stuff weighing on you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you're just, you're being
like, I stress out when I have to pay the mortgage, right? Like that's big enough for me. I can't imagine the weight of just all this other, just,
oh God, it's
being a leader. Why anybody would do that?
It's astounding. It's astounding. Meanwhile, actually, go back to that screenshot before, because and the patrons also picked it up as well. When we have a Garak episode, because he doesn't have a uniform and we're telling things over a lot of time, Garak gets to wear a whole bunch of different Garak outfits. And this one, I don't think I've seen before, because this is a disco version of the Season 1 Next Gen outfits. He's in a Season 1 Next Gen engineering outfit, but for a disco. If we went to like a, foam party in the Enterprise.
It looks great.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. So
also the AI is so much better now. The
yes.
cleanup of these.
So much better. So glad I grabbed all that. So despite being asked for this incredibly dangerous stuff, Sisko reluctantly agrees to get some. He has no choice. Again, hot committed. And of course he goes to Bashir, and Bashir is not happy about it. Sisko is forced to give him a direct order in writing. And because he can't tell Bashir why, Sisko continues to become more and more isolated. And I think that's also part of the pressure cooker that Sisko was on, because every step along the way here, because it is so illegal and so secret, the people he's asking for his help, his friends, his family essentially at this point, he's pissing them all off, asking them to do unreasonable things, and can't tell them why.
Want to throw this dart at the dartboard.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get referenced again, but it did here. At the end of the episode, that we'll get to in a couple hours, because of the way it all planned out, and the explosion, and the this and the that, all the evidence of this stuff, of this plot, especially when he deletes the message at the end, is disappeared, right? Except one thing. The written order that Bashir demands. And it stuck in my craw that I was like, oh, something is put in writing.
Well, that's interesting. It's interesting. Well, I mean, at least the bare bones of this does have Starfleet approval. So Starfleet knows some of what's happening.
Right, because they know that the ambassador was coming on board. Yeah. Covertly.
And I would imagine, was the order written in disappearing ink? Possibly. You don't think Garak could go in there and delete the order?
That's a good point.
But yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good one. So later, Sisko, Garak, and Tolar watch the draft of the fake meeting in the holosuite. They've made it more realistic by adding bickering and mutual disdain. I wrote down, imagine that looks like what a cabinet meeting would look like, but it's also what makes our dynamic realistic. It's the bickering and the mutual disdain. So they're satisfied and save as, and Tolar gives them the rod. But Sisko is not letting him off the hook yet. And Sisko says, "You're not leaving until your work has been accepted by our client. That isn't fair. You can't hold me against my will. I haven't done anything wrong. We had an agreement. I'm making a new agreement. If that program passes inspection, you walk free. If there's even the slightest flaw, I'll send you back to the Klingon prison and tell Gowron to take his time when he executes you." Crazy.
Sorry for this tidbit, but my sick brain is having great thoughts, Keith.
Oh.
You know what I think Trek did? I'm sure all of Trek. I'm going to say Deep Space Nine because it's what I know, but that they did as sort of anachronism in time, but turned out to be the right call, like that a smart civilization would do. So we've talked about this, I think, before. Their important media is stored still on physical media, right? They could, clearly in the future, you could just digitize everything. Everything's digital, right?
Right.
But they recognize that certain things should be physical, should be tangible.
can't just email it.
Right,
Yeah.
or like even biological, right? Some of those goo rods or whatnot. And I think that they did, because as a product of their time, they couldn't foresee the fully digital future, but actually ends up being the next evolution, because we're going to realize a couple days, that having everything on computers is a bad choice.
Yep.
So it's cool that Trek makes that conclusion.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Also hadn't thought of that. Look, Mike, you're sick brain.
What can I tell you? Doesn't mean anything, but I'm just
You're just saying words.
Non sequitur, baby.
That's what a podcast is. We just say words. So, after Sisko's abrupt turn and violent turn, there's a cutscene.
Oh, cool.
And there's a bunch of cut. The script that I got here had a bunch of cut stuff from it, and most of it are.
By the way, send me that script URL again. Oh, you did. Okay, cool.
It's in the chat here.
Great.
So,
No, you have to resend it from the
chat.
I
have to resend.
I rebooted, remember?
Oh, right. So, there's a couple things that I think it's really interesting from a writing standpoint. One is most of the cutscenes are actually just cut couplets at the end of each scene. So each of these scenes, like, we've got to get Tolar. Tolar is this other thing. We added a little piece of information. But what is so good about this episode is it trims all the fat from these scenes, and we cut straight to the next beat. We don't need to set up everything. We don't need to add a couplet explaining how we got through this door. We just cut to the next information. And so that's most of the things in these scenes, but there are two scenes that are interesting. So this is the cutscene that Garak continues this conversation with Sisko after he threatens Tolar. And Garak says, "Felt good, didn't it? To put your hands on a man and say, you will do this or else. After all the intrigue and deception you've had to engage in over the past week, you must have found that moment of pure brute force to be a refreshing change of pace." And Sisko says, "Mr. Garak, why is it no one has killed you yet? My innate charm?" And it's a funny, end of the scene, but it's interesting that Garak does some psychoanalysis there and gives a little more context about why Sisko would threaten this guy. He's already done the job, but again, we see the pressure mounting, pressure. And you can see, what I wrote is it does nothing for the plot, as it will turn out, like him threatening Tolar, but it shows the cracks in Sisko. And he says, "Maybe I was under more pressure than I realized. Maybe it was starting to get to me. At the time, I thought I was off the hook. Starfleet Command had given the plan their blessing, and I thought that would make things easier. But I was the one who had to make it happen. I was the one who had to look Senator Vreenak in the eye and convince him that a lie was the truth." So Garak and Sisko walk to the meeting with Vreenak, and Garak announces that, I'm going to go and spy on the Romulan shuttle's computers while you're having the meeting. This is very important for reasons later. And interesting that Sisko's like, yeah, all right, go spy. But I guess why wouldn't you? They might actually get the evidence they're looking for on that shuttle.
Right.
So they confirm with Worf that the entire section of Deep Space Nine has been cordoned off, but even Worf doesn't know why. But of course, Garak has to rub it in his face. We get an amazing sequence of the shuttle bay, which you're showing here, opening up to receive nothing? Nope, it's a cloaked Romulan shuttle.
Saves on budget.
What? Well, no, because they still had to do all
the
of
miniatures, yeah. I just meant you don't have to see the shuttle, because, I guess you kind of see it
we do
here. Yeah.
No, we 100% do. Because you looked away. Go back and watch it, because we see it's actually a brand new shuttle design we've never seen before. So we see it decloak and all that. But what a cool, just in canon way to do, spycraft. You just the garage door opens and then it closes, and we don't know that anything's gone in. So cool. So we meet Vreenak in the airlock, and he's amazingly smug. And he says, "So, you're the commander of Deep Space Nine, and the emissary of the prophets, decorated combat officer, widower, father, mentor. Oh, and yes, the man who started the war with the Dominion."
Burn.
Somehow I thought you'd be taller. He does such a good job with this. So in Act 4, Vreenak continues to be a pompous dick about the Romulan ale. He calls it Khalifal, but it's Romulan, it's blue, it's ale. And Sisko tries to talk him into joining their side without having to do the whole ruse. But Vreenak says, "You are persistent, I'll grant you that, Captain. But I'm afraid dogged determination isn't enough to change the reality of your situation. Time is definitely not on your side. The Dominion shipyards are working at 100% capacity. Your facilities are still being rebuilt. The Dominion is breeding legions of Jem'Hadar soldiers every day. You're experiencing a manpower shortage. But more important, the Dominion is resolved to win the war, no matter what the cost. And we both know that the Federation has already put out peace feelers. Now I ask you again, Captain, in all candor, if you were in my position, which side would you choose?" Sisko says, "I'd pick the side most likely to leave me in peace when the dust settles. Maybe you're right. Maybe the Dominion will win in the end. Then the Founders will control what is now called Cardassia, the Klingon Empire, and the Federation. So instead of facing 3 separate opponents with 3 separate agendas, you'll find yourselves facing the same opponent on every side. We have a word for that. Surrounded." Stephen McHattie is terrific here. And of course, again, the Russia-Ukraine parallels here are so intense, because with the theory being for all the other countries in Europe, okay, you let him take Ukraine. Well, what difference does that make? Well, he's not going to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
And do you really want to face the consequences of inaction? Quick memo to current administration. Yes, there is an ocean, if only there were some way to cross that ocean. Do we have any ability to cross an ocean, or maybe with like a missile or something? I don't know. Anyway, Sisko says, "What if I told you that the Dominion was planning a sneak attack on the Romulan Empire at this very moment?" And he very reasonably says, "I'd want proof." So they show Vreenak the holo meeting, and he is naturally concerned and of course wants to examine the rod. And here is where we have another cutscene, which I think is going to answer some of your questions. Mike, do you want to read the cutscene with me, or are you busy?
No, I'm good. I thought we were reading the scene at the end, but let's read the cutscene.
Yeah.
Give me a line from it now.
Got a minute?
Okay. Hold, please.
Okay, we're gonna do it.
Okay. Am I to be Dax or Sisko?
Be Dax.
Okay.
You're driving the scene.
Okay. Sisko is pacing in his office, lost in thought, when Dax, that's me, enters. Got a minute?
Sure. What can I do for you?
Dax takes her time. This is a delicate subject. This may sound crazy, but think about it before you say no.
Just say it.
What if we tricked the Romulans into believing that the Dominion was about to attack them?
I don't have the whole scene. Yeah, go ahead.
Hear me out. We find a way to manufacture evidence of a planned Dominion attack. I'm not sure what it should be. A series of coded messages from their central command. A Cardassian defector who smuggles out secret war plans. I don't know, something. Then we show it to the Romulans and try to convince them that they're one step away from disaster.
You want to start a war based on a lie?
I want to end a war, Benjamin. And I want the good guys to win. Besides, let's face it, the Dominion will attack the Romulans eventually. It's just a matter of time. So in a way, we'll be doing them a favor by pulling them in now.
That's an easy way of rationalizing something you know is wrong.
More wrong than war?
I'll think about it.
That's all I ask. I suppose it's one thing to come up with an idea like this, and another to put it into motion.
Oh, that's why we put on these collars, old man. Which is such a fascinating little couplet. I understand why they cut it, and then we don't need it or whatever. But interesting to have Dax there come up with the whole plan. And it is interesting. It's this episode is fascinating because it seems so shocking, and so like I would never have thought we would ever do this, and yet at the same time, especially through Dax here, of course we did this. Why wouldn't we do this? Like, if
I was directing the episode and that cut scene stayed, I would direct Dax less like she's coming up with this plan and more give me just an element, an air of recognizing that's probably what's happening.
Yeah.
Right? She's been around long enough. She knows there's some weird stuff happening, and she's recognized what Ben's doing and who he's talking to, and putting together that. It's probably something like that.
This is exactly what Section 31 should be doing.
Yeah, that was an interesting thought too, but maybe they got bigger fish to fry. You know what I mean?
We don't know, and but it definitely feels like getting Romulan to get back on our side through any means, all means, has to be an absolute priority at this point. Fascinating. So Sisko narrates about waiting and waiting for Vreenek's response. He says, I don't think of myself as an impatient man. I don't agonize over decisions once they're made. I got that from my father. He always said that worry and doubt were the greatest enemies of a chef. The souffle will rise or it won't, he used to say. There's not a damn thing you can do about it, so sit back and see what happens. But this time, the cost of failure was too high, and I found it hard to follow his advice. If Vreenek discovered that the data rod was a forgery, if he realized that we were trying to trick him into war, it would push the Romulans even further into the enemy camp. They could start to openly help the Dominion. If worse came to worse, they could actually join the war against us. I had the distinct feeling that victory or defeat would be decided in the next few minutes. So Sisko arrives for Vreenek's decision, and we arrive at the most famous meme in Deep Space Nine history. It's a fake!
So good.
I mean, what a take, but also just like one of the biggest uh-oh moments in Star Trek history. So in Act 5...
I'd love to see the other takes. You know what I mean?
Right. It's bold, and it's especially because Stephen McHattie doesn't move a muscle the entire episode, which is why this feels so extreme. Like, he just does not twitch an eye. He does not move anything, and I bet they did a bunch of different versions. Does he do it fully on voice? Does he do this like weird whisper thing that he does? I don't know if they ADR'd that. Yeah, I want to see the other takes. That's a good point. So, in Act 5, Sisko narrates. So it all blew up in my face. The lies and the compromises, the inner doubts and the rationalizations. All for nothing. Vreenek was furious. I can't say I blamed him. I'd have reacted the same way after telling me in no uncertain terms that he intended to expose the vile deception to the entire Alpha Quadrant. He got back in his shuttle and he headed home. There didn't seem to be anything more to do. So I went back to work. And 2 days later, we got the news. And this is where Dax and Bashir are looking at the next casualty report. Worf comes in and announces, Captain, we've just received word from Starfleet Intelligence that a Romulan shuttle carrying a high-ranking senator has been destroyed. Which senator? Senator Vreenek. He was returning to Romulus from a diplomatic mission to Sakura when his shuttle exploded. The Tal Shiar is investigating, but their preliminary report points to sabotage. They believe the Dominion is responsible.
So for a moment, hold on, for a moment here. There's a brief moment, and it points to excellence, of course. There's a brief moment where I thought, oh, that sucks. Deus Machina, that sucks.
Right. Yeah.
I was wrong.
Everyone but Sisko practically cheers. But Sisko heads off to confront Garak and punches him across the room. Shall we do the scene?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, you want to do Sisko or Garak? You get to choose.
I feel like you got a through line going with Sisko now.
Okay, great. Let me pull it up here. Get up. You killed him.
That's right.
That's what you planned to do all along. You knew the data rod wouldn't hold up scrutiny. You just wanted to get him to the station so you could plant a bomb on his shuttle.
That wasn't quite that simple. I did have hopes that the rod would somehow pass inspection, but I suspected that Tolar might not have been up to the task.
What about Tolar? Did you kill him too?
Think of them both as tragic victims of war.
Gah!
If you can allow your anger to subside for one moment, you'll see that they did not die in vain. The Romulans will enter the war.
There's no guarantee of that.
Oh, but I think there is. You see, when the Tal Shiar finishes examining the wreckage of Vernek's shuttle, they'll find the burnt remnants of a Cardassian apophylitic. Excuse me, Director, can we have another take? Optolithic. Oh, but there is. You see, when the Tal Shiar finishes examining the wreckage of Vernek's shuttle, they'll find the burnt remnants of a Cardassian optolithic data rod, which miraculously survived the explosion. After painstaking forensic examination, they'll discover that the rod contains a recording of a high-level Dominion meeting at which the invasion of Romulus was being planned.
Yes. And then they'll discover it's a fraud.
I don't think so. Any imperfections in the forgery will appear to be the result of the explosion. So, with a seemingly legitimate data rod in one hand and a dead senator in the other, I ask you, Captain, what conclusion would you draw?
That Vrenek obtained the rod from Sakura, and that the Dominion killed him to prevent him from returning to Romulus with it.
Precisely. And the more the Dominion protests their innocence, the more the Romulans will believe they're guilty, because it's exactly what the Romulans would have done in their place. This is why you came to me, isn't it, Captain? Because you knew I was capable of the things you weren't capable of doing yourself. Well, it worked. And you'll get what you wanted. A war between the Romulans and the Dominion. If your conscience is bothering you, you should soothe it with the knowledge that you may have just saved the entire Alpha Quadrant. And all it costs was the life of one Romulan senator, one criminal, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer. I don't know about you, but I'd call that a bargain.
Folks, I think Mike just got Garak for the remake.
Thank you very much. So there's fun. I mean, he got that man. Well done, Garak.
And
I think he's also proud of himself. He's like, you know what I gotta say? If I do say so myself, fucking nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. All right, we'll get into it at the end.
Yeah.
So we finish with Sisko doing the iconic Sisko monologue. And it says, this morning at 0800 hours station time, the Romulan Empire formally declared war against the Dominion. They've already struck 15 bases along the Cardassian border. So it's a huge victory for the good guys. Perhaps the turning point of the entire war. There's even a welcome to the fight party in the wardroom tonight. I lied. I cheated. I bribed men to cover up the crimes of other men. I was an accessory to murder. But the most damning part of all, I think I can live with it. And if I do it all over again, I would. Garak was right about one thing: a guilty conscience is a small price to pay for the safety of the Alpha Quadrant. So I'll learn to live with it. Because I can live with it. I can live with it. Computer, erase that entire personal log. And Avery Brooks, stunning performance from Avery Brooks there.
Yes.
And it is both good writing, because he repeats himself 4 times. He says in this scene 4 times, I think I can live with it.
Folks, I'm gonna preempt Keith's point he's about to make by probably making the same point.
Yes.
Do you wanna watch a play, watch a movie, and decide whether the acting is good or not? Here's a great easy test. anytime someone has to repeat a line or sing a line the same, a verse or a chorus the second time, watch them. Do they do it the same way? Are they saying the same thing? Or is saying the same thing a way to say something else or to escalate? Is there a difference? Because every time he said, this is great acting, this scene. It's like everything perfect, right? Yeah. Where he's looking, his body language, his intention when he repeats the line, all perfect. Even better, there's a subtle hint of a hubris, maybe even, right? Mm-hmm. Like he achieved this and he's wearing it now as sort of like a badge. I don't want to say of honor, but of like something he had to do for the war. But sort of not acknowledging that he also was played the whole time.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And
he wasn't the facilitator. I mean, he holds the responsibility of any sort of outcome. Yes.
Right. He lit the match, but he's not the one who controlled the fire.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And just to finish the thought on the acting of and the writing of it all, he says, "I think I can live with it, so I'll learn to live with it." Different statement, because I can live with it, and I can live with it. 4 very similar lines. Each one of them means something different, and it's clear that Avery did the work. Right? I think I can live with it. The first time, it's basically straight. You know, I think it was justified.
It's a question.
Yeah. Second time, so I'll learn to live with it. Well, that's different because you're not living with it. You clearly are not.
That's an aspiration.
I'm hoping to in the future.
Yeah.
Then it says, because I can live with it.
Acknowledgement.
That felt more like a acknowledgement. Maybe there's a question because he finishes it with the decision. I can live with it.
I would say, to play with it, the decision or realization, he's already made the decision.
He's already made the decision. He has no choice. Does he have a choice? I don't know. And it's all fascinating.
I mean, if you think he's saying, like, I'm recognizing in this moment, I'm already comfortable with it. So yeah. And there's a physical decision there too that I'm sure is not in the stage direction, although I haven't looked. The whole episode we see him drinking, right? We don't know what. We can make some assumptions. But right before those statements, those bold statements, chooses not to drink, puts the glass down.
Right. Well, and then he finally crosses his legs for that final thing because he is an acceptance in there. It's such good writing. It's such good acting.
And it also shows why blocking is so important in a scene, right? In the business, we call it business, right? Business is when you're kind of like, oh, I'm reading my data pad, or I'm drinking my cup, or it's just like bullshit, physical yada 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 you're doing.
Yeah.
And it can be really messy and stupid, and sometimes some directors pay no attention to it, right? And so actors are like, do whatever, you got some stuff to play with it. And some are very specific, because in scenes like this, where it's blocked so specifically, performed so specifically with the business, there's impact, there's statement and storytelling within the action.
Yeah, it's a so phenomenal setup and scene. So before we get into it, Brian from Video Game Drive-By emailed me. You can always email me ahead of time if you want to talk about it before. And you sort of touched this already, but I think this is a great kickoff point for our discussion about the episode. And that is, it occurred to me, Brian says, that the best possible source for the data rod was actually Garak himself. He must have had it the whole time. Now I think the reason he needed the biomimetic gel was to make the bomb with which he blew up the shuttle. He probably planned the entire thing out before Sisko even approached him. Which I think is really, really interesting.
Like he was going to do this unilaterally with or without Sisko at some point? Or he just needed the access to because
he needed Sisko to get Vreenak there and to get Starfleet on board. But, like, you have to think he had 72 different plans that he was working on at all times. And so, did he actually, your question, did he actually contact anybody? Were they actually killed? Unclear. Did he actually have to get the rod from somebody else, or did he have it in his own archive? Unclear. We don't know.
Seems like something he could get.
Feels like something he would have kicking around.
Yeah.
That would be the type of thing he'd steal a couple on his way out, as opposed to a box of pens. All right, let's get into it. We got to talk. We got a lot to talk about.
I want to go back to, Keith, clearly it's in jest, but the fact that the pitch is close and the tempo is almost dead on really stands to your proclivity to create an earworm.
It's
all I did was just paste it on top.
It was my ability to create an earworm, and thanks to the good ear of your brainworm.
Whatever's eating me from the inside.
AlamarEmmys.
Every time you do that impression, you then apologize and then do it again a few weeks later.
4. Okay. All right. Let's do best moment. Could we find one? Are there any good moments in this episode?
The two that we never pick one. The last Shakespearean monologue, Shakespearean soliloquy. There's no, that's not even hyperbole, right? That is a Shakespearean-esque caliber soliloquy he does.
Yeah. Including the repetition.
Everything about it. He approached it clearly. If you looked at his script, my guess is that he approached it exactly
there are notes
as he...
all over every one of those. Yep.
Yeah. If you ever look at a good actor's script, it should be almost indecipherable because they've written all over it. Yep. Anyway, I shouldn't say. That doesn't necessarily mean you're good. Just means you're thorough. So that, I think, stands probably the best scene I've seen on this show. I think.
Yeah.
I also love the tension that you can cut with a knife when the first time we see Vreenek and Sisko, right?
Yeah.
When he's got to sell him the bill of goods. Not to mention the moment before it's a fake. Because you almost never see Sisko physically uncomfortable. We talk about how powerful it is watching someone try not to cry.
Yeah.
Watching Sisko not shit his pants in that moment is really, and it's brief. It's like a second or two. It's
watching
really
him
powerful.
clench.
Yeah, those are my picks.
Yeah. I normally try to pick something else just to be contrary, but it's the final scene, of course. It's one of the most iconic moments in all of Trek history, and Avery's performance of it, the writing of it, what it means to the larger story within Deep Space Nine, what it represents in terms of like this loss of innocence for Trek in general, but as opposed to sort of new Trek where it's like dark for the sake of dark, this is darkness within the context of light, within the soul. It is the struggle. It is not just we gave up. And so it's this final scene.
Well, what's different, I think, I'm gonna transition, but rather save us the. Let's see if I can just do it without the stem bolts thing.
Stem bolts.
Yeah. Best moment goes off. It's not that he hasn't. We, the good guys, whatever you want to call them, haven't done shady things in the past. Obviously we have towed the line before when it comes to what's right, what's wrong, what's necessary, what's not. We've dealt with the theme before, but this is the first time we've seen it owned so cognitively, right? Where it's said, okay, these are the things I have to do. I'm not proud of it, but it has to be done. And that's a bold statement for a property that has been very aspirational in the past.
Yeah. Because
it lets in a lot of reality. It lets in a lot of reality that some people might not want in their fairy tales.
You get your hands bloody.
Yeah. And once again, you're taking the main dude in our show, right? Our hero, and saying he ain't, by pure definition, a hero. He is not claiming to be, and he is both a religious figurehead and a dude who has to make these types of moral decisions.
It is interesting that he's also the Pope.
Yeah.
While all of this is happening.
Right. So I'm not passing judgment, obviously, and I think it's one of those moments in TV where you're like, who amongst us, right? Like Breaking Bad is a great show for that, right? Because they build that, but like, okay, here's all the bad things this guy did. Yes, he did all these things, but also like he was dying of cancer and he was trying to give his family money, so it's really hard to hate him from the get, right? And then things balloon, and you have to constantly check back in and be like, oh my goodness, is that okay? I'm not saying that their arcs are similar. I'm just saying the moment of kind of having to reanalyze your hero. I jotted some stuff, but none of this is good. It was right after the episode and before I'd really thought too much about it, but I'll just kind of skim through. In the Pale Moonlight, I think this is Deep Space Nine at its absolute best. Bold, gripping, completely unforgettable. Moments that I will think of instantly when I think back on our journey with this show. And we just enumerated them, so I won't. It takes everything we know about Trek and its moral compass and gives it the real-world stress test. What happens when doing the right thing isn't enough to win a war, which in its own right is probably not morally correct? War in general, meaning. What happens when the Starfleet captain, in quotes, has to get his hands dirty? Avery Brooks, this is a phenomenal performance as Sisko. It takes us through his we just talked about why it is. That final, I can live with it, you believe him, but just barely, right? There's the definitive statement, but there's the one before it, where he's convincing himself. And that ambiguity betwixt them is so skilled from an acting perspective, but so the nuance in the storytelling is perfect for where we are in the show, for where we are in the war, for where he is as a character. It's just perfect. Then we've Garak, who I think we could do a whole nother episode on the nuance of what just took place.
Yeah.
Probably the galaxy's most dangerous problem fixer, right? He sees the big picture. He knows how to make things happen, if not have already plotted it, like you just brought up, Keith. And he does it without hesitation, almost with glee. Is that dangerous? Is that good only because he's on our side right now? Sisko might have thought he was in control, but he was not. Garak had his own playbook the whole time. That final I lied moment, absolutely chilling, because there's a realization that like Sisko didn't have any control of this. Perfectly paced.
Yeah.
Brilliantly written. Packed with tension from start to finish, challenging everything we've come to expect. But what makes it so powerful? It's the kind of storytelling that sticks with you long after the credits roll. This is almost a perfect episode of television. If you're to only watch one episode of Deep Space Nine, I'm guessing this is the one, right?
I mean, it's hard to do because like in order to appreciate it, you need to know all the context.
Yeah, but if you didn't have the context, is what I'm saying. You would know it after this one episode. I think it comes as no surprise, Keith. This will be the third time I say the words 100 self-sealing stem bolts.
Yeah.
This might be I think this is my favorite episode. I think this is not just the best, I think this is my favorite episode.
Well, I to spoil the end, you're in good company.
Yeah, I figure as much. But not just because Sisko's once again my favorite character. I think Garak is also my favorite character. I think they are both my favorite characters on the show.
Well, I mean, this is ranked number one.
Oh, it is. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Heart in like a full stop number one in Deep Space Nine. Now, there are a lot of other episodes that I think are on par, but they're just very different episodes. This
rendering our adjudication completely pointless.
Well,
the whole show.
Did you think we had a point?
He said.
What the hell gave you the idea anything we're doing has a point?
You're right.
There are like Trouble with Tribbles, like or Tribbles and Triple H, I forget what the episode. Like, also equally just a delight that's mostly fan service, right? You have other episodes that are super emotional storytelling. Jake and the like that one is a huge one for me. Far Beyond the Stars, you have these incredible social relevance, but this one just it serves nothing but itself and its own storytelling and the world. And so it can't be pulled out as a very special episode. You know what I mean? This is the linchpin of the series, I think, in a lot of ways. This is the pivot point of the whole series, because it changes not only the story of Deep Space Nine, it pivots the entire series, the entire universe of Star Trek. So I think it's incredibly important that way.
Can you riddle me this, Batman? Is it safe to say, or maybe it's not safe to say, that all of the major players are now in the war? Is there anything I'm forgetting as far as, like...
Define major players.
Meaning, like, you know how in Lord of the Rings it's all about, like, we have to get all the sects in to face the baddie. Like, do we have all of the pieces now to, like, address this conflict? Or no, there's still more to come?
There are more pieces to come.
Okay. Cool. Wow. Okay.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, we are Battle of the Five Armies, like, for sure. So yeah, no, there are more pieces coming, which is crazy. Yeah, it's like, hey, this can't be the top of the escalation, right? No, it's not.
But it could be, right? That you could make it. I would not be shocked to learn that, okay, with 6 episodes left in season 6 and then a season to go, that we're coming into the final act.
We are definitely setting up the final act. Yeah, obviously. So I think, you know, a couple of things. We've talked about a lot of this. You know, I mentioned it before, but the ratcheting down, the tightening of the script down to the essentials is a masterclass in writing. Mm-hmm. If you are a writer, especially a screen or a TV writer, look at the draft script that I had. You can just search, like, in the Pale Moonlight DS9 scripts, you'll find it, and compare the draft to what actually got on screen, and you can see what good editing, the final pass at a script, can do to elevate a script. It's an incredible, just little stuff, but you can learn so much by looking at what got cut versus what stays. It's interesting that the entire episode here is about regret and shame for Sisko, and yet the plan works perfectly. The plan works beautifully. Like, you know, Sisko in the entire time is talking about his regret, his shame. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done whatever. Well, you know what? The objective set out in the beginning: get Romulus to enter this war on our side. That's exactly what happened. And bloodshed didn't hurt anybody on our side. In fact, you didn't get anybody else's hands bloody other than your own and Garak's.
Yeah, no good guys were lost, right?
No good guys were lost, right? And so in terms of, like, what it would take to do this was probably the least costly way in terms of blood and treasure to do this. This went off spectacularly in a lot of different ways. And as much guilt and shame Sisko has about his role in it and the blood on his hands, well, he didn't actually do the thing or even plan the thing that really turned this. Garak did, right? Assassinating Vreenak and then taking out the blue guy. Sisko didn't do any of that.
Right.
Now, could you argue that by bringing in Garak, you risked that? Oh, absolutely. I think you had to assume that Garak had a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, and as you move down the alphabet, things got darker and bloodier and more horrible. So, you know, and in some way, what Garak says at the end, like, hey, look, buddy, you chose me because you knew I would do this. And that you know, like, I am your I'm your WMD. And, like, you chose me. You took me off the leash because you knew I would take care of it. And so, like, don't you judge me. You came to me. You knew who I was.
We didn't highlight that scene enough, and I think that scene was also incredible because, you know, you could tell how many times prior that Garak has been in situations like this, right? Because he did not respond with any sort of aggression towards Sisko when Sisko came at him. Almost like he expected it. It was a matter of time.
He had to have.
But he got his one barb in very intellectually at the end, which was cool.
Yeah. It's like all it costs was one Romulan senator, one criminal, and your self-respect. And as he says, I'd call that a bargain. And you know what? So would I.
Yeah.
Like, it worked beautifully. You know, Garak, as the terrifying tool that he is incredibly effective. And looking at the larger context of things, we don't know what is going to happen, but adding the Romulans to your side of the war is maybe the most consequential thing that has happened thus far on all of Deep Space Nine. Garak made it happen.
Well, you know, in asking Garak for his help, right? If you want to get down levels, you're not really asking Garak. You're asking a Cardassian Obsidian Order member, because that's where all his skills are, right? And so you're basically going to the enemy, an enemy, trained by the enemy. Like it's like us going to like a former Taliban guy to plan, or no, forget it. Let me use an actual thing. Going to a German spy, right? To create the nuclear bomb against the Nazis. Like that's
totally Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And he's gonna get it done. And I think that this is, I mean, think about where Garak has come. You know, just sort of the simple tailor, which we never bought. We always knew he was a spy. But now, like, these two characters, Sisko, the emissary, the leader of the tip of the spear for the Federation against the Dominion, and Garak, these are the two most consequential people in the universe at this point. Genuinely.
I like that it's a retcon too, because one thing about Garak, remember that episode where we're on the other ship, the other space station, and he kills some folk, and then we're like, oh, it was laughing gas, forget it, he's off the hook. Right? And you're like, oh, we kind of let him off the hook, that should have consequences. Well, guess what? When push comes to shove, oh, he'll do some murder. It's cool. Oh, yeah, like, you don't need no laughing gas.
And he has, and will, and like he is the ultimate pragmatist. He is the ultimate whatever, that he will do whatever it takes. And we judge, we try to disassociate ourselves with, whatever, but we need these people. We need Garak. We need Garak.
You want me on that wall, Keith? We need him on that wall.
We wish that we didn't, but we do. And so, you know, this episode it's a lot. It is a lot, and it certainly sets us up for the rest of the series.
We're gonna need a number, buddy.
Oh, it's 100, clearly. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. So, folks, what did you think?
Yes, please. We welcome your walls of text.
Yes, send your walls of text. I it's going to be as long as an episode today. It'll be a long episode next week. That's okay. That's what we're here for. So in the pale moonlight, folks. Holy moly!
Yeah, holy crap!
Send me all your memes. So obviously, as I said, this is number 1 on IMDb. It's a 9.4. The top rated episode.
Do you think other hundreds are coming?
Ooh, that is very interesting. I don't know, but there's some great stuff yet to come.
Okay.
So it is. Let me put it another way that you'll understand. Don't worry, we're not gonna have to suffer through the final season like we did the practice.
All right.
In fact, next week is the episode His Way.
2 weeks.
Oh, yes, that's right. We're off next week because Mike's got a gig. But in 2 weeks we're gonna do His Way. It's I think a fantastic way to to take a deep breath after In the Pale Moonlight. So thank you so much for watching. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks with His Way. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
Codes while walking past homes.
This morning, we heard they're getting stolen, so just take an extra precaution. You think you lock your doors, you're safe, but apparently they're always one step ahead.
It's a wonderful neighborhood. It's been really safe and quiet, and, hopefully this was just a one-time thing.